All right. Are we started? Hold on. All right, guys, welcome to my channel, Psyched Out Slick. Today we have a really interesting topic. Hold on. These might be a little distracting. All right, so today we have a topic that I find super interesting because it's a topic I know a lot about just because of, my knowledge in psychology and sociology, but we're going to talk about obedience programs, how they've been used in psychology, how they have been applied to our society and our own people. So let's go over what a PSYOP is. So a PSYOP, hold on. Let's see here. Just want to get my chat going. What's going on here? Okay, whatever. That's neither here nor there. All right, sorry about that. So what is a PSYOP? A PSYOP is a psychological experiment that is designed to manipulate the public. So I want you to start thinking about what are things in the time that I've been alive or before I've been alive that things just sounded really fishy and that America is just always the good person. I want you to really think about that. Why is it that we're just always the good guys? And why have we always been able to be programmed to think that way? Just something to think about. So some of the obedience programs that I learned about back in school, but also that I think are actually pretty well known, at least some of them, like the Milgram experiment, the I think it's called Ash experiment, or the Stanford prison experiment. So the Milgram experiment, I want to share my screen with you guys. We're going to go over what each one is, just so that way, oh, hold on. We're going to go over this stuff later. Alright, so let's go over what the Milgram experiment is. So it says the Milgram experiment in psychology refers to a series of studies conducted by Stanley Milgram that investigated the extent to which people would obey instructions from an authority figure, even if those instructions conflicted with their personal conscience, demonstrating a strong tendency for individuals to obey authority, even when it means harming another person. Participants were instructed to administer seemingly dangerous electrical shocks to a learner when they answered questions incorrectly, revealing a high level of obedience despite the learner's apparent distress. So this one is really relevant because I want you to think about all the times where people that might be just trying to get by, just trying to do their job, and they're saying, well, I'm just doing my job, right? So at the end of the day, they're falling into this type of obedience program where I'm going to just, do what I'm told and follow my job so I don't miss a paycheck, so I can support my family, right? So you're just kind of going to go with the status flow and what you're being told, what your authority is telling you, even though maybe you know it's wrong. If you guys haven't yet seen James O'Keefe's documentary, The Line in the Sand by O'Keefe Media Group, it is amazing. And one of the themes of the documentary is that all these people that were just working the system for these globalists, they had the same answer. man, I'm just doing my job. And I can't say that I would do anything different. I'd like to think that my morals and my values, are really strong and that I would never give in to something like that. But when it comes to being faced with supporting your own family, sometimes I think people are willing to look the other way and just do what they're told. And I think that has happened a lot throughout history. And, um, I want you to also think about, and so the line in the sand, sorry, that was about the migrant crisis that's currently happening. But then also think about, if you want to think about the Holocaust, right? Like, there may have been people that were just doing what they were told and not necessarily believing in Hitler's um, and his own belief system. And maybe I shouldn't be saying that word, the H word. What, YouTube's a little funny. I'm just still getting used to streaming and what words I can and cannot say, so I will try to be more mindful of that. So basically, this experiment, the Milgram experiment, was set up to have people that were answering questions and then people that were giving electric shock waves to the participants if they got an answer wrong. And the person that was in charge of the study would be standing there or listening in to the experiment, and while the person's giving the electric shocks, they hear this person in distress, like they are screaming, they're saying, "Please don't do it again." But then their authority figure is telling them, "No, give them the next shot. That they need the next shot." And despite them feeling conflicted inside, not wanting to cause any bodily harm to somebody, because that wasn't what they thought they were getting into, they did it anyway, and they succumbed to the authority. And I think about like times in my job where I maybe didn't do what I thought was right or necessary because he's the owner, he's the boss, I'm going to follow his lead, when it shouldn't be that way. So I think it is important for us to be mindful of these experiments. Now, psychology classes will teach you about the ethics of this and how it's unethical to perform a psychology experiment like this. But they did it, and they're still doing it, but not in a traditional researchy type environment, but to a mass scale. So think about that. Are there times where they're using this psychology against the public to meet their goals, their own gains? You might be an innocent person in a part of their plan and you're just being used by them and you're just going along with it because you feel like, hey, why not? Then there's I think it's the Olch experiment. So it says in psychology, it's not about obedience, but rather about conformity, where individuals are likely to change their opinion or behavior to fit in with a group, even if they know the group is wrong. This was demonstrated by Solomon Asch through a series of studies where participants were asked to compare line lengths, often giving the incorrect answer when the majority of the group, who were Confederates, did so. Key points about the experiment are: the primary goal was to examine how social pressure from a majority group can influence an individual to conform, even when the correct answer is obvious, or a line comparison task participants were presented with a set of lines and asked to identify which line matched the target line. The twist was that most other group members, Confederates, were instructed to give a clearly wrong answer. So there were people that were in on the study that knew to not answer correctly. And then they had one person that didn't know, that wasn't in on the study, right? And they then were like the last ones to answer. And they went along with all the other wrong answers because they didn't want to be the only one that was wrong. So now that we know that this is a real life experiment that they have tested out to see the results, think about how they have applied this in current life, right? So think about Project Mockingbird, which we'll get to further on in the video, but they have media, people that work for the media, like MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, ABC, all of those legacy media people. They have people on their payroll, the CIA, that they feed fake stories to be able to confuse the masses. So when they say disinformation and misinformation, they mean it because they created it. And then if there's a real story out there, they'll call it disinformation so that way you don't know to believe it or not. And then when you have mass media just parroting what they want people to believe, you're more likely to parrot that to other people, and then other people are going to want to think that way too because they don't want to think like, oh my god, I'm crazy, right? So, it makes you really think, wow, these studies are really applied in a lot of different ways. So not only in Project Mockingbird, but think about how conformity. So when someone's telling you something, and I have like a list of possible PSYOPs that we can go through together, and one of them is 9/11. The others are school shootings or mass shootings, January 6th, the media, we just talked about Project Mockingbird, the Nord Stream pipeline, JFK assassination, the Trump assassination, coronavirus, the trans agenda, and feminism. So, those are all ones that if you Google online, they're obviously going to say that that's just a right-wing conspiracy theory. But we also know that the CIA created the term conspiracy theory to help people, to discredit people that were speaking the truth about JFK's assassination. So we also have to take calling people conspiracy theorists with a grain of salt. And so back to this conformity and changing their opinion or behavior to fit a group, even if they know the group is wrong. What about the moon landing? We really wanted to beat Russia to the race to space. I think they had been to space, but the race to the moon. And during the Cold War time frame. And they supposedly created a plan just in cases, as my nephew likes to say, just in cases. Just in case they didn't ever make it to the moon, to help other people believe that America made it to the moon first. But we're supposed to believe that, no, that was just in their back pocket, but they really did make it to the moon. Even though AI will say that those pictures look fake, and that the shadows are fake, and that, how did they make it past the there's like a belt ray of radiation. Like, how did they make it past that? Like, there's a lot of things that make people question this moon landing. And I mean, they have people in the media that are just parroting what they want you to believe. So that way you're like, oh yeah, the moon landing, it really happened. And what if that's not true? What if a lot of the history that we've been told is not true? But the people that are in control and that are in power, they're the ones that are shaping the narrative of our history and confusing everybody with misinformation. All right, and then there's another psychological experiment, which is the psychology obedience experiment associated with Zimbardo. Is called the Stanford Prison Experiment, where he studied how people readily conform to social roles, particularly when assigned the role of a prison guard, leading to behaviors that could be considered abusive towards those assigned as prisoners, demonstrating the power of situational factors on behavior and obedience to authority within a given role. So this one's also very interesting because think about it. What did it just say? How they conform to social roles when assigned a role, leading to behaviors that could be considered abusive, demonstrating the power of situational factors on behavior and obedience to authority within a given role. So again, think about the people in our government that are being given money and donations by people that want to not see America do well. They're taking money from people in authority. It might change their behavior. They might then conform to those social roles that people are expecting of them. Think about the woke mind virus and how all these companies were starting to do the DEI stuff. And, a lot of people are calling it the DIE, and that's the die committee. Instead of like hiring people that deserve it based on their accomplishments and achievements, we're going to give it to them based on their ethnicity and the color of their skin. That's wild, right? But we're going to have people that even though it might tank their company, and we're talking money, that's a powerful motivator right there. And they're losing money, but they're still listening because there's someone that's in power above them telling them you need to do this. So there's a lot of reasons why these past experiments that they've done on people that were considered unethical, that they would never do nowadays, are important because it still applies to what they're doing today. So let's talk about what kinds of PSYOPs there are. So PSYOPs, I love this because at the bottom it says the term PSYOP has been used by conservative media to allege government conspiracies, but this is illegal. Please. We just talked about PSYOPs, or not PSYOPs, but experiments, right? And just a handful of examples of how those could be used. So let's talk about examples of PSYOPs, because not all PSYOPs are the same. And sometimes they might do PSYOP within a PSYOP. Confusing, I know, but that's the point. So there's propaganda. So PSYOPs can include spreading propaganda through social media, leaflets, or radio stations. For example, the U.S. dropped millions of leaflets on Iraq before the 2003 invasion to undermine support for Saddam Hussein. So propaganda is where they, again, will use the media, newspapers, radio, television broadcasters, all of that. They'll use those people to keep projecting a narrative that they want to keep magnifying, so that way the rest of the people then start to believe that propaganda. Then there's false flag events. A false flag event is when one party takes an action and blames it on another party. For example, pirate ships would display the flags of friendly lands to mislead merchant vessels. I think there's some other better false flag events examples, like the Nord Stream pipeline that we kind of mentioned earlier. The U.S., it's been theorized that the U.S. has been a big part of that blow up, but they tried to make it look like another country. Let me see the Nord Stream pipeline. So it's run under the Baltic Sea from Russia to Germany to provide Western Europe with natural gas. Yeah, so I think they were trying to blame Ukraine for this, when really I think it was the United States. Don't quote me on that. That's just what I think happened. Or it could have been like Russia, but to make it look like but no. I definitely think it was the United States murking the waters and getting their hands involved in something that they don't belong in. Let's go back to PSYOPs. So then there's deception. So PSYOPs can include using deceptions to trick the enemy. For example, British soldiers tricked the Boers into thinking that Garrison was more heavily defended. There's also been like deceptions with tricking the enemy. It'll come to me. I don't want to waste time though. Let's see, shock and awe. So PSYOPs can include using repetitive, disturbing noises and music at high volume. For example, the U.S. military played hard rock at the Vatican City Embassy to break Norwegia's will. Don't know that reference. Then there's spooky recordings. There you go, now you guys can see it. So PSYOPs can include using spooky recordings to play on the superstitions of the enemy. For example, the U.S. used spooky tape recordings in Operation Wandering Soul to scare and demoralize the Viet Cong. So I think there's been a lot of different ways that the U.S. government has used PSYOPs for what they might consider the betterment of America, but it also causes more hostility and more conflict and more war. And I think sometimes we do need to defend ourselves or be there for our allies, but I think a lot of the times they are being pushed. These conflicts and hostility is being pushed a lot of times by our own country. And it's hard to want to think that way, because I think Americans have been propagandized to think that we're always the good guys, but I think we do need to start waking up and smelling the roses and realizing that we are not as innocent as we like to portray ourselves to be. And I think we need to start taking more personal responsibility for our part in these conflicts by stepping away and allowing other countries to do their own thing, and being able to be America first. Yeah, so that's where I'm at with that. So let's see. So what would be the reason for these PSYOPs that we talked about before? So 9/11, I think the goal could have been to start a decades-long war, a war on terror, which is basically just a war of fear that they perpetuated. When I say they, I mean our own government. And to trust our government more, and for mass surveillance of citizens. I think that that was a really big turning point in us giving away some of our freedom. You know, again, the foot in the door approach, when we talk about psychology, you know, they start with something really small, really just, something that is, you know, supposed to be for your safety and protection, but then they use it against you, and that's when it starts to become a more police state. You know, school shootings, mass shootings, I think, you know, there are crazy people out there that, you know, have mental health issues, and that leads them to doing some of these heinous acts. But I also think that there might be an element of, you know, these, what are we talking about here? False flag events? Like, are we blaming these psychologically ill people, mentally ill people? Are we blaming them to take blame for the actions of guns? So that way we can then take away guns from the Americans. You know, I really used to believe that, yes, we need more gun control and that will help make America safe. But I also think that well-meaning Americans should have the right and access to guns to be able to protect and defend themselves. You know, we were founded on that for a reason, and that is because America was able to defend themselves against Britain, because they were their own armed militia. There's a reason why there's more guns in America than there are people, and it's because of it being such an important right, and how we were even founded and able to like maintain our peace as a country, and to even establish a democracy for the first time that was governed by the people. I mean, that's the first time it's ever been done successfully. Yeah, so sorry, I'm like losing my train of thought. Then there's January 6th, so I think that that was to cause fear, for Trump to be a threat to democracy, and to cause more into like this fear of insurrection and like overthrowing the government. And it's funny how they always accuse the other side of what they're doing. So like the left will often accuse the right of what they're doing, and it's to confuse you. It's a psychological tactic. Like all of it is rooted in psychology. So if we learn more about psychology and how they're using it against us, we might be able to make some changes in our own behavior, or being more self-aware and mindful of these tactics so we don't fall into their trap. And I do feel like America is waking up a lot. I think with Trump being, like, I don't want to say unanimously because there are a lot of people that are still angry about it, but I mean, he won sweeping through the House, the Senate, the popular vote, the electoral vote. It's crazy. I think that just shows you how America is, you know, they're ready for a change. They're starting to see the corruption, that people are spewing lies and hatred and all these terrible narratives about Trump. And he is not a perfect human. None of us are. I don't think any of us should pretend to be. None of us are self-righteous. But I think that he does care about the American people. I think he cares about how America's represented on a world stage, and that he wants to safely close our borders and maintain our security so that way we can continue to be a strong nation with borders. And I'm hoping that he can also get our economy back in shape. Like if we can get that in order, man, that would be really cool to see. I think that would bring a lot more patriotism on both sides. Not, I do, again, this might just be more my own personal point of view, but I think that the right is a lot more patriotic than the left. I almost feel like the left has been brainwashed into hating the Constitution for what we stand for. I mean, free speech, gun rights, all of these things that are really important in America, they're being taught to hate. Sorry, but we need to wake up. So we already touched on the media and Project Mockingbird and the Nord Stream pipeline. Then the JFK assassination, the Trump assassination. The JFK, I think JFK knew that the CIA was, sorry, I'm like looking at my notes if I'm looking down. I think that the CIA knew that JFK was onto them. That he actually said, I'm going to split the CIA into 1,000 pieces, because he knew that they were a shadow government and that they were working against him. When you think about the Bay of Pigs and the Cuban Missile Crisis, that was the CIA, and they were trying to get him to go to war. And they again are just they're working in the shadows to get their own agenda done without the American people in mind. It could hurt Americans, and they don't care if their agenda is being met. And so I really hope there is a cleanup with these 3-letter agencies and alphabet soup. We need some accountability. With the Trump assassination, I think that they wanted to blame Iran. I think that if that would have happened, there would have been a lot of other things that they would have benefited from without him being in the way. But I think they also could blame Iran. And I think that went south when some of the narratives started to change around the shooters. Coronavirus, I think that was a psyop for mass control, the globalist agenda to be able to create more fear, to then fall in line with a more authoritative government. And feminism, I think that one, not only has the feminist movement tricked women into going into work to then just be taxed more. I mean, I really feel like that's what it's all about, is for people, or for the government to tax not just 50% of families, but 100% of families, the man and the woman. And because of that change, then women were expected to work, and I think that has led to the dissolution of marriages and families, and people being present for their kids. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a working mom. I think that that's great. I mean, my mom is super successful at what she does. But I also think that there is an inherent value in a woman taking care of their family, being able to be the backbone of the family. The husband is there to keep it secure and safe and financially stable. But I think the woman is also there to help, keep the status quo, to help keep keep the house working in good motion. cooking healthy meals, making sure that things are clean, raising your kids and being present for their lives. I think that those things are really important. And when we are changing our value system as women, I think that we might need to reevaluate that a little bit. It goes back to the whole abortion thing. Why do women feel like that's such an important option for them to kill their baby? Because they feel like it's going to take away, but that's a society thing that has been messaged to them, right? So we need to identify where is that messaging coming from and how can we change it to emphasize that women are enough with being domestic and helping nurture their family and caring for their family. But if they want to pursue something outside of that, that's totally fine too. But we don't need to look at it in a negative light. And I wanted to show this clip on X so we can watch it together.
Because of feminism, women feel dignified to go leave the home and work for some other man. It has nothing to do with the family, but we've been told this narrative that to work for the man whom you love is somehow oppressive.
What do you mean?
So for example, the idea that it's good for a woman to be a stay-at-home wife and mother and to dedicate her time towards taking care of her husband and her kids, that is presented as undignified in today's world. It's presented as oppression of women, right? For a woman to be in the home and to be a stay-at-home wife and mother, it's you're losing your independence, you're losing your power. But the reality is you could either work for your husband if you guys want to have that kind of arrangement, or you could go and work for some other man.
I see what you're saying.
But women feel like
so
it's
that's
better.
a job for your husband is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. It's an incredibly difficult job. I think people underestimate how difficult that it can be to be a stay-at-home wife and mother.
But it's a good job. It's a rewarding job.
It's the most important job
because
to have.
instead of sending your kids to daycare, you're taking care of them.
It's good, but feminism has psyoped women out of thinking that that's good.
So what do you guys think about that? A psyop of women thinking that it's bad to be a stay-at-home wife and to take care of their family. I think there's something to be said about that. I'd love to hear your guys' feedback and comments in the comment section. Please share that. Then there's some known CIA operations. So let's go to this page. Psychological and torture experiments. Yay, we're getting to the good stuff. All right, so let's see. The ones that I highlighted in my notes were Project Bluebird, which also turned into Project Artichoke, and then Project MK Ultra, and Operation Midnight Climax, which also was important in them researching sexual blackmail. So that's really relevant today because of the whole Jeffrey Epstein stuff and the P. Diddy stuff. They would use CIA prostitutes that were, they were working for the CIA, and they would drug these people that would come to the to work or to be with the prostitutes, and they would video them, and then they would, I guess, research the response to that. And then there's Project Bluebird. So this one was interesting because this one, the purpose of the project right here. So the purpose of the project was to develop the means to control individuals through special interrogation techniques. So ways to prevent the extraction of information from CIA agents and offensive uses of unconventional techniques such as hypnosis and drugs. The purpose of this project stated, can we get control of an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will and even against fundamental laws of nature, such as self-preservation? Wow. our government used unwitting people to research this, to see if they could have people that they could have control over. Mind control. That's mind control. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Manchurian Candidate, but I think that has a lot to do with this, where they are creating a person that's in the political system that's basically a robot. Like, they do what they want, what they kind of program them to do, and then they kind of erase their memory, so they have no memory of doing it. And this also reminds me of the show on Prime called Homecoming with Julia Roberts. I'm a big movie buff and show buff, at least I used to be. Fun fact, I used to work at Blockbuster, the best job ever, and I worked there up until they were bankrupt. So I saw them till the end, and it was a lovely job. Truly miss Blockbuster days. But anyway, the show Homecoming. Julia Roberts plays a social worker in the show, and works with people that are leaving the military to go back to civilian life, and they're basically drugging them, and they like lose their memory, and then they like kind of find out that they're a part of this program. A little weird, but also kind of relevant to what we're talking about. And it looks like it was without their knowledge or consent. There was also, oh no, that's the next one. Yeah, so MK Ultra. This one's like more well known. Let's see. So I think this like continued with the mind control. It says that they didn't have enough human guinea pigs to try these extraordinary techniques on. So they then started to use their own people in the experiments. There was someone that died. Is he listed in here? There was someone that died. I watched a documentary on it. No, I can't think of his name. It says for this part, and they also use people in Canada. So his experiments were designed to first de-pattern individuals, erasing their minds and memories, reducing them to the mental level of an infant, and then to rebuild their personality in a manner of his choosing. To achieve this, he placed patients under his care into drug-induced comas for up to 88 days and applied numerous high-voltage electric shocks to them over the course of weeks or months, often administering up to 360 shocks per person. He would then perform what he called psychic driving experiments on the subjects, where he would repetitively play recording statements, such as "You're a good wife and mother, and people enjoy your company." Wow. That's just insane that this was our government. Please leave a comment below. I would love to hear what everyone else thinks about this kind of stuff. All right, the last one that I wanted to talk about was Midnight Climax. Where was that one? Oh, here it is. So it said it consisted of a web of CIA-run safe houses in San Francisco, Marin, and New York, which were established to study the effects of LSD on unconsenting individuals. Prostitutes on the CIA payroll were instructed to lure clients back to the safe houses, where they were plied with a wide range of substances, including LSD, and monitored behind one-way glasses. Several significant operational techniques were developed in this theater, including extensive research into sexual blackmail, surveillance technology, and the possible use of monitoring drugs in operations. So, like, when you think about that, mind control, torture, I mean, they don't care if they do it to their own people, to unsuspecting people. So what makes you think that they aren't doing it now? What makes you think they aren't doing it through 9/11, mass shootings, January 6th, the media, the Nord Stream pipeline, JFK assassination, Trump assassination, coronavirus, feminism, the moon landing? I mean, you name it. What can we believe? That is the point. They don't want us to know. They don't want us to know anything. They don't want us to believe anything. They don't want us to believe what's in front of our own eyes that makes sense. They want to craft their own narrative. They want to feed it to you, and they want you to listen to it like you're a zombie. I'm not okay with that. I'm not a zombie. I mean, sometimes I think I might be a zombie with my fibromyalgia, but I would like to think of myself as not a zombie, not falling for these mind control operations and obedience programs. I'm not very obedient. So if you want to follow me, please do. I will be doing a lot more content on this type of information, so that way we can not be obedient together. So join me. I'm psyched out to hear what you have to say. Again, my channel is called Psyched Out Slick. I'm Slicked, and please leave a comment below, like, and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys soon.